and we will end up in Sigtuna contemporary with Kiev, and I will start the talk by discussing the context of this town, and from both we have started a project on Sigtuna itself, and then it's a part of the Atlas, this archaeogenetic project. And Anna will discuss our results about the early town dwellers, who were the people that migrated into this Viking Age town. But I will start by discussing the milieu, because Sigtuna turns out to be a really late Viking Age melting pot. It's situated by the shore of the former Lake Mälaren, and today it's really a picturesque town where tourists come in the summertime. It's very nice, and this old street is the same street that was there already in the late Viking Age. It was founded in approximately 970–980, which is makes it the oldest still existing town in what was former medieval Sweden. So it has really long traditions back, and it hasn't got this Dnieper making these alluvial deposits like you have. So the town plots are really stable, and they are there from the beginning. Sigtuna is also famous for its many churches. This is the Church of St. Mary, the convent of the Dominicans. This is the church, the many church ruins. This is St. Olaf's Church, with a baptisterium possibly. This is the former vicarage in Sigtuna that surrounded what is still the remains of St. Peter's ruin. And there are several others, the Russian church and remains of St. Laurentius and several other churches. So the Christian landscape really stands forward when you came sailing up along the coast and up this water route. If you went from Kiev, you would go along the waterways into the Baltic, and you would approach mid-Sweden to reach Sigtuna. And Sigtuna was founded extremely strategically on the borders of two hundreds, the old territorial divisions, and on the border between what was the main lands in Svitjod, Tiondaland and Attundaland. It's situated where they meet. So it's a very political sort of position in the landscape. It's also a very secure position, since you had to sail into the Baltic, and the Baltic was very narrow, and here started the former Lake Mälaren. This was the crossing point between sweet and salt water, and remained so until Sigtuna was founded, actually, when Lake Mälaren, due to shoreline displacement, ended over here. So Sigtuna is sort of safely on an inner water route and guarded by pole blockages. So safe and on the way up to Östra Aros and Old Uppsala in the inner water route, and sort of also guarded by many tuna settlements, which were settlements probably of political positions, more like estates from the early Roman period. You can see that there is one generation of tuna sites established already in the Roman period, and then there is another wave of them in the early Merovingian period around 600 AD. So when we meet Sigtuna, and this is a picture that you've probably met several times, it's the Antech reconstruction of the 140 town plots from around 970–980, and this is the early structure of the Stockholm town, or at least the picture that is depicted in scientific literature. So these pink patches are graveyards thought to be without wooden churches, and then there are some burials that are visible above ground. There are the green ones, whereas the other ones are below flat ground and inhumations. But practically every single one of them are Christian burials. So they are east-west oriented, and it's only like one cremation burial. But it's been said since the 80s that Sigtuna was founded on virgin land. And this is something that we want, Anna and myself and Cecilia Jung, we want to explore it further, because it's an old saying, but it's easy to sort of propose that something is established on virgin land. It makes it very nice black and white model. But history usually doesn't work that way, and we have started to discover these sort of older layers by certain objects and possibly older graves. But that's something that remains to be sort of shown. But what we can see is that very early there is also a Christian graveyard over here, and connected to wooden church, and some of these are also connected to wooden churches. So it's a far more complicated and complex burial landscape than anticipated already in the beginning of the 11th century. So we have to sort of go behind the truth about Sigtuna. But we have sampled a lot of this material, and we expected, it is thought that these town plots were owned by people whom the king had sort of invited to become town dwellers. And in the scientific literature you often find it remarked that they are probably from the local surroundings or from the region. Whereas in the material culture, as you know, you have a coinage connected to Sigtuna, Olof Skötkonung, which is very large for this period and even for the early medieval period. You have ceramics that resembled Kjellström ceramics, and you have Byzantine objects and objects from the Western world. So it's a mixed in the material culture, and we want to know who were these early town dwellers. Where did they come from? Were they locals, or were they from the outer world? And in Sigtuna, from these early town dwellers, the phase one in the town's history, 970 to 1190 approximately, there are 325 burials of Christian type inhumations, and 185 of these are on these pink patches that I showed you in the graveyards, thought to be without church, and 140 are on early churchyards. But now, as Anna will say to you, we have found out that she has found out that one of these graveyards actually has a gender division, so that the females are buried to the north and the males are buried to the south. So it's really much more complex than we have expected, and it makes it all the more interesting. In the Atlas, the genetic project, several of these are included, and Anna will speak much more about that. The graveyards can be they are quite dispersed, the burials, and there are sort of empty spaces between them. And we don't know if they were fenced or if they had any wooden markers above. We can see, and I will show you, that the diet of those who are buried here differs from the diet of those who were buried in the very central graveyard connected with an early stone church. You can also see that there are other types of grave markers sandstone runestones. This type of grave markers, they are connected to several of the early church sites and must have been connected to early wooden churches. It's a long discussion, but it's recently been highlighted in a thesis by Cecilia Jung, and there are several indications of early wooden churches connected with these type of runic monuments. So in Sigtuna, you could probably have, perhaps not such a fancy stone church as this one, but you could have a standing church at the same time that you had people buried in graveyards without any churches. So this is complex and interesting, and it makes you want to discuss the social identity of the graveyards. Who were they? Were they from the same region? Were they members of certain households? We can see that some people buried in this part of town, they have died early and they have worked hard. But Anna will talk more about that. One interesting spot is central town, where the royal manor was thought to be placed. Now this is really special because there are early Christian burials and there is an early church with a crypt, and at the same time there are a meter of cultural layers under the burials from AD 1000. So we have to figure out what was before the proper sort of foundation date of the state of this town, and that's not solved yet. Now let's see. Now something happened here, I think. I had made a plot with one of the churches, actually, but it's been messed up. Over here, centrally in the town, there is a bishop buried and an old lady marking the space for a former wooden church. But we'll skip that and move to the origins of the town. What could have been here before Sigtuna was founded in 970? And we've started to search for early objects in the cultural layers of Sigtuna. And here's a bird brooch from the 7th century found within the town, and there are other objects over here. There's also a hill fort with C14 datings to around 600, which is very late for hill forts in this region. And across the water route there is a royal manor known as Forn Sigtuna, and it's even mentioned by Snorre Sturlason. He says when Odin and the Aesir moved from Turkey, Odin settled in Forn Sigtuna, ancient Sigtuna, and he had his settlement there. And the name of the town is actually picked from this old Tuna site, which is very manifest in the landscape by huge terraces, terraced houses on plateaus, and with a harbour. So it remains to be sort of interpreted what the relation was between these nests, very strategically placed at the water route on the 100 border and the border between these two lands and Sigtuna. And if this was a sort of a control station and a special settlement guarding the water route, then there might be earlier graves that we haven't thought of, and maybe we have to look through our genetic results and check the C14 datings, because it's often C14 datings done on bone, on the skeletons themselves, and then there are this reservoir effect and the all of the things that the people ate for their diets. So this is the framework for our Sigtuna study that Anna will present now.
Thank you.
So I think maybe should we take questions now or after Sigtuna? Yeah.
I'm a physical anthropologist, but also an archaeologist. And I'm afraid that I won't give you all these answers that Torun promised you. I will try to show you how we can contextualize our DNA results, and also what kind of questions we work with in Sigtuna when we're doing this kind of work. And hopefully some of the things that Torun mentioned will be in here too. Is it working?
Yeah.
Yes.
There it is. This will be a very brief presentation, but I will give you at least 3 examples. Starting with, hopefully, a mass grave from St. Lawrence. And this is a churchyard located in the center of the city. And the mass grave was excavated in 1998. And it was dated to the 10th century, so the foundation of the town. And it contained 19 individuals, both men, women and children. And the majority of these individuals showed signs of sharp force trauma. This is what you get when you try to do something fancy. Even the youngest individual had a lesion showing that the child had a lesion going through the spine and out through the left hip. Hopefully I can show that as well. Yeah, there it is. You can see it. And we did a DNA analysis, not only on this child, of course, but also on the other individuals. But unfortunately, the DNA was very fragmented, so we didn't manage to get much out of it. But it was possible to see that this child was a girl. And maybe this doesn't sound that amazing, but actually it is amazing. Not only does it say something about this group of individuals, but also about the event itself that eventually led up to the grave. It also shows us that it's now possible to sex young individuals, and that is something that you can't do just by looking at the bones. And now it is possible to discuss socialization processes. When did a young girl become an adult woman? When was a young boy considered an adult man? So this is new, and we can combine it with burial artifacts and different burial constructions and so on, and discuss these types of issues. And this is also something that I will continue doing together with Maya when we're working on multiple burials of different sorts. And my second example, sorry, I will never do this again. Never do. There it is. Deals with men with modified teeth. In Scandinavia, we have 120, 130 men with dental modifications. And these are foremost found in the eastern parts of Sweden. and most of them are dated to the Viking Age. We had some examples from the Vendel period, the period before the Viking Age, but also one or two men from the early Middle Ages. And these dental modifications, they are artificially made marks on the labial surface of foremost the upper teeth. And they're all men. In Sigtuna, we find them in cemeteries without a church building, so not in the churchyards. And I'm not always convinced that these marks were intentionally made, because sometimes they are very vague. It's very difficult to identify them. You need to look very closely at the teeth. So they could be a byproduct to some other activity, which I don't know, not least yet. Hopefully in the future I can try to figure it out. But we're now trying to gather as much information as possible about these men. So we're doing a strontium and a DNA analysis, and so far the results indicate that they were all non-locals, so coming from other places to Sigtuna and having this feature. Yeah. And this is my third example, and it deals with a churchyard also located in the center of Sigtuna. And it is actually a very good example of early medieval practice, where you can see a social hierarchy in the location of the burials. Because they buried people of lower status in the periphery of the churchyard, and people with higher status close to the church. And it has been excavated during, well, several times. And I have analyzed the skeletons, and the guys who were buried in the periphery, they showed signs of different, very interesting bone changes. I will get back to them. And in 1993, this man that Torun talked about was discovered. He was lying on his back, and he had this cross here beside him, and that is why it was interpreted that he was a bishop. And on the other side of the church, in the north side, we find another very nice grave that I will soon get back to. So let's see, slowly, here it's coming. Patience. Or really? Here it comes. Yeah. The individuals with the bone changes, all the changes were indicative of leprosy. And we have several individuals with leprosy in Sigtuna. So this was something that I suggested. And in a later study, it was possible to identify the bacteria. Hopefully. Well, anyway, it was possible to identify the bacteria. This is cool in itself, I think. But not only was it possible to identify the disease, it was also possible to identify two different strains with different origin. So one of them originated from the Middle East and the other from Europe. And this suggests that what we're looking at is two different networks, two different patterns of distribution of the disease coming to Sigtuna. And when you can identify the pathogen, it is also possible at least to discuss the real prevalence of the disease. And this is also something that we can't do just by looking at the bones. And also, if we can discuss how diseases are transmitted and so on. We can also discuss the closeness between people, hygiene and well, contact and so on. So this offers new possibilities to understand the life in the early medieval town. And this is the nice grave that I was talking about. For you guys, maybe this isn't a nice grave, but in Sigtuna it's a very nice grave. It has this nice sandstone slab, and beneath the stone slab we find the skeleton of an older lady. And she had a very interesting story in her bones. She had a lot of skeletal changes that you could relate to her age, like osteoporosis and so on, but also congenital anomalies and some inflammatory changes that tells us that she had a long and interesting life. But it was foremost the location of the grave and the construction of the grave that suggested that she was a person of very high status, belonging to the elite. And as Torun mentioned, we have a lot of artifacts and archaeological records suggesting that Sigtuna had a lot of contacts on the other side of the Baltic Sea. And there are historical sources mentioning women of very high status marrying into the aristocracy in Sigtuna. So we are of course very interested in if she was local or non-local. And now we're doing a strontium and DNA analysis on a lot of individuals from the town. And we'll look at gender-related mobility patterns. And so far, there is, in fact, a difference between some of the men and some of the women. Unfortunately, we don't know anything about this lady yet. So this is not published yet. It will be, eventually, I hope. So, and there I will end. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please, questions to our colleagues?
I have a question about these dental modifications. Are you sure that they are not of artificial origin, or maybe just they are connected with professional activity? Or what?
I don't know. I think they are connected to some kind of activity, definitely. But which kind of activity, I don't know. But some of my colleagues has suggested that they were intentionally made just because they wanted to look beautiful. And I'm not so sure, because the variation is great. And sometimes, as I mentioned, you can't see, you have to look really, really close to see the marks.
But what we can see is that these males are often buried in harbor sites. So maybe
without churches, yes?
Yes, and on Gotland and on other sites connected to the sea. So probably they could have taken part in seaborne expeditions. And Anna can also see that they tend to end up in sort of buried as bonded people, as thralls, beheaded, placed on their
like pirates,
masters' graves. Yes.
Yeah, we have at least 2 individuals that we have interpreted as slaves because they have been beheaded and placed on top on another grave.
So there is an interesting pattern connected to these males.
Okay. More questions? Please.
About the ladies' grave, last one. It would be very interesting, perhaps, determine the features, special features, in which we could speak about a local provenance or not local provenance. What do you think about this?
What I would prefer, I don't know, what do you prefer? It would be nice to have a foreigner.
Yes. You can see there are interesting changes in the gender relations between the cremation burials in the rural countryside, where, for instance, children are almost never buried. Only 1 to 2% of the children are at all visible, and quite many males and several females. And it's probably connected with the inheritance rules at the rural settlements. But when you're in a Christian context, you once again see the children, they start to get buried again, and males and females. But you see these social differences. So, and it's mirrored also in these runic grave markers on the Christian burials, that women are more visible than when the rune stones are erected in a landscape context. So actually the women sort of stand forward, but also the nuclear family. And when rune stones are erected in the countryside, they mention other kin relations, in-laws, but it's always a male memory. So this woman is sort of, she's the new era. She's made very visible in a churchyard that is the most prominent site in Sigtuna.
Again, it's another very strong woman. So it's the one Carol talked about.
Okay, more questions?
You talked about the different strains of Kjellström. Is there any different morphological difference between them, or only genetic?
No, not that I could see. I was just happy when the geneticist told me. Oh, okay. I wasn't even sure that it, in fact, or I believe that it was a leprosy, but since I didn't have the typical changes in the face, this was an indication. So this is why DNA analysis are so. Yeah.
And we could also say that the archaeogenetic results from Sigtuna show that we get some of the most interesting results from burials that you wouldn't sort of pick out as an archaeologist. They are not complete, it's not the whole skeleton. They are sort of in a trench, you know, for plumbary stuff. So that's together with these all the bacteria and viruses that you also get from the genetic analysis, it makes it very special. It's sort of, you highlight contexts that you would normally not have sort of given any attention.
But it is also a bit annoying, of course. You want the DNA from Kjellström and you get his neighbor.
Yes. And we sort of hope very much, for example, on the boat burials and the chamber graves from the Roman period. Was this man actually in Roman service? And then it turns out that the DNA is poor, and then there are no teeth preserved. So you have to constantly rethink your context. But I think that's good, because it's sort of it makes your brain work all the time as an archaeologist, and you start to pose new questions to old sites. And actually, when we go into these contexts in the Atlas project, we start to find new things that we hadn't thought about earlier. So it gives a lot of sort of results.
Okay, more questions?
No.
I have a question to Anna, last one. Do you have any idea about the ways of penetration of this mycobacteria or lepra?
How do you mean?
The ways of penetration.
Okay, how it transmitted? Foremost, you inhale it, but your immune system have to be low for the body to react.
I mean the territories which are connected from.
Oh, you
What
mean
territories,
through,
I mean, yes.
Oh, yeah, the different.
How it penetrated to your country, not that it was from Ukraine.
So far, there haven't been so many. So far, there haven't been so many studies. So we have, I think, 3 cases from Europe and 3 cases from the Middle East and 2 in Denmark and so on. So it's still very difficult to find roots. I'm sorry.
Okay. That's all. Thank you very much.